I still remember the exact moment people stopped laughing at me. It wasn't when I bought the house. It wasn't when my business crossed its first $1 million. It was the night an old coworker looked around my office, went quiet for a few seconds, and asked me something I never expected. "How did you know this would work, when everybody thought you were crazy?" The strange part is, I didn't know. And honestly, that's what scared me the most. For almost 5 years, I worked the overnight shift at a grocery distribution warehouse outside Cleveland. My job was simple. Scan pallets. Track shipments. Fix labeling mistakes nobody else cared about. The building smelled like cardboard and cold air. Every night felt identical. At 2:17 a.m., the same vending machine buzzed. At 3:40, Marcus from loading dock complained about his knees. At 4:05, someone always dropped something metal loud enough to wake the dead. I got used to living inside repetition. Most people there did. You could almost see it happen over time. The way people stopped talking about the future. At first they'd say things like, "I'm saving up," or "I'm planning something." Then eventually it became, "It is what it is." That sentence terrified me. Not because the job was terrible. Honestly, it paid enough to survive. The people weren't bad either. But every night I felt this strange pressure in my chest, like I was slowly becoming someone I never meant to become. Invisible. I remember driving home one morning while the sun was coming up. Everyone else was waking up for normal jobs while I was heading to a tiny apartment with blackout curtains and microwave dinners. And I had this weird thought. What if my entire life becomes routine before I even notice it? That thought stayed with me. Around that time, I started listening to psychology podcasts during my shifts. Mostly conversations about habits, perception, decision-making, how people slowly become the identity they repeat every day. One speaker said something that bothered me for weeks. Most people don't fail because they think too big. They fail because they slowly adjust their dreams to match their environment. I kept replaying that sentence in my head. Because I could feel myself doing exactly that. At first, I thought I needed motivation. But the more I paid attention, the more I realized motivation wasn't the problem. My environment was. Every conversation around me revolved around limits. Gas prices. Rent. Bad bosses. People getting lucky. Rich people cheating. Dreams being unrealistic. And after hearing that every night for years, something strange happens psychologically. Your brain starts protecting you from disappointment by convincing you not to want more. That realization hit me harder than I expected. So I started doing something small. Every morning before sleeping, I'd sit at my kitchen table for 10 minutes with a notebook. No phone. No music. Just silence. And I'd write one question. If I stopped assuming I was stuck, what would I actually try? At first my answers were embarrassing. Start a business. Learn sales. Create something online. Work for myself. Even writing those words felt uncomfortable. Because the second you admit what you want, you also risk looking foolish. I didn't tell anyone at work about it at first. But eventually Marcus noticed me reading business books during lunch breaks. One night he laughed and said, "You planning to become a millionaire between forklift runs?" Everybody around the table laughed. I laughed too. That's the weird thing about insecurity. Sometimes you join people in mocking yourself before they can hurt you first. But after that, the jokes kept coming. CEO coming through. Don't forget us when you're rich. You watching those motivational guys again? None of it was brutal. Mostly casual teasing. Still, it got inside my head. Because when enough people treat your dream like a joke, your brain starts questioning whether ambition itself is embarrassing. And slowly, I started hiding my goals. I'd stop podcasts when people walked near me. I'd keep books inside my backpack. I even deleted notes from my phone once because I felt stupid reading them. Looking back, that was probably the lowest point psychologically. Not because people mocked me. Because I started mocking myself. Then something happened that changed everything. One night during break, I was sitting alone outside behind the warehouse. It was freezing. I was eating vending machine crackers and scrolling through job listings I knew I wouldn't apply for. That's when this older truck driver sat beside me. His name was Leonard. I barely knew him. He looked at my notebook and asked, "You writing goals?" I expected another joke. Instead, he said something quietly. "Careful who you share dreams with." Some people hear ambition as criticism of their own choices. I didn't fully understand what he meant. Then he pointed toward the warehouse. Most people in there already made peace with their limits. So when someone else wants more, it makes them uncomfortable. That conversation stayed with me for months. Because suddenly the teasing made sense psychologically. It wasn't hatred. It was self-protection. If somebody near you changes, improves, or takes risks, it forces you to question your own decisions. And most people avoid that feeling without even realizing it. For the first time, I stopped taking the jokes personally. That changed my behavior immediately. I became quieter. Not insecure quiet. Focused quiet. I stopped explaining myself. Stopped announcing plans. Stopped looking for approval before taking action. And weirdly, my mind became calmer. That's when everything actually started moving. I began learning digital marketing after work. Nothing glamorous. Free videos. Cheap courses. Practice projects. For almost a year, nothing happened. That part nobody talks about enough. The invisible phase. The phase where your effort produces no visible results, and everybody around you quietly assumes they were right about you. I built tiny websites nobody visited. Ran ads that failed. Made almost no money. Some nights I genuinely questioned myself. I remember sitting in my apartment staring at my bank account thinking, what if they're right? What if this is just escapism? But another thought kept interrupting that fear. If I quit now, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering who I could have become. That thought mattered more. So I kept going. Eventually a local gym owner hired me to help with online ads. Then another business owner contacted me. Then another. Nothing exploded overnight. That's another hidden truth people misunderstand. Most real success feels painfully ordinary while it's happening. There's no movie soundtrack. No dramatic breakthrough moment. Just tiny decisions repeated consistently long enough for your identity to change. About 3 years after Leonard's conversation, I finally quit the warehouse. Nobody clapped. Nobody gave a speech. Marcus just stared at me and said, "You serious?" I said yeah. He shook his head like I was making a mistake. And honestly, part of me wondered if he was right. Because certainty is addictive. Even miserable certainty. The first 6 months on my own were rough. Some clients disappeared. One refused to pay me. I worked longer hours than before. But psychologically, something had shifted. For the first time in my life, my effort and my future felt connected. That changes a person. You start paying attention differently. Thinking differently. Even walking differently. Not because money changes you. Because ownership changes you. A year later, my business crossed 6 figures. Then multiple 6 figures. Then eventually much more than I ever imagined while sitting in that warehouse cafeteria. But here's the strange part. The money wasn't the biggest transformation. My mind was. I started noticing how deeply human behavior is shaped by identity. Most people wait for evidence before believing in themselves. But sometimes belief has to come first. Not fake confidence. Not pretending. Just the willingness to stop treating your current circumstances like permanent truth. That realization changed how I saw almost everyone around me, including the people who mocked me. Years later, I ran into Marcus again at a gas station. He looked exhausted. We talked for a few minutes, and eventually he asked how business was going. I told him. He went quiet for a second, then laughed awkwardly and said, "Man, I always knew you were onto something." But I remembered every joke. For a second, I felt this temptation to prove something. To finally feel superior. Instead, I just nodded. Because honestly, I understood him now. Better than before. Most people aren't trying to destroy your dreams. They're trying to protect their understanding of reality. If they accepted that you could change your life, they might have to confront the possibility that they could have changed theirs too. And that realization can be painful. I think about Leonard a lot now. Especially one thing he said before leaving that night outside the warehouse. Your environment trains your expectations more than your talent does. At the time, I thought he was talking about success. Now I realize he was talking about identity. The people around you shape what feels possible. The conversations you hear become mental boundaries. The jokes repeated long enough become beliefs. And eventually, you stop asking what you truly want. You start asking what feels realistic. That's the dangerous part. Not failure. Adjustment. Slow psychological adjustment. The kind that happens quietly over years until your dreams no longer sound ridiculous, because you stopped having them. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Leonard never sat beside me that night. Maybe nothing. Maybe I still would have figured things out eventually. Or maybe I would have stayed in that warehouse convincing myself stability was enough while secretly feeling resentful every morning. I honestly don't know. But I do know this. The biggest shift in my life happened long before the money appeared. It happened the moment I stopped asking other people for emotional permission to believe in a different future. That's what changed everything. Not motivation. Not luck. Not confidence. Permission. And maybe that's why people laughed at me in the beginning. Because when someone quietly refuses to accept the limits everyone else normalized, it unsettles people. Not always out of cruelty. Sometimes out of fear. Sometimes out of regret. Sometimes because deep down, they abandoned parts of themselves a long time ago. I think that's why this story still stays with me. Not because of success. Because of how easy it is for human beings to slowly become whatever their environment expects from them. And how rare it is for someone to notice it happening before it's too late. Even now, years later, I still keep a notebook near my desk. Every once in a while, I write the same question I used to ask myself after those overnight shifts. If I stopped assuming I was stuck, what would I try? And honestly, I think that question changed my life more than money ever did.